There's a push towards more decentralization for DAOs that creates this binary situation.
If you're a DAO, you're using Gnosis Safe, and if you're not, you're a bit suspicious.
I used to trust FTX. There is no FTX. People will forget. There will be a lot of trust in centralized parties. We'll have to go through that one more time.
DeFi is too hard to learn. Self-custody is too hard. This problem of the upgrade authority, it's entrenched with the entire ecosystem.
We shouldn't have any users of that kind. We should burn the upgrade authority.
What's up, everyone? It's me again, George. We're back with the Next Billion podcast. We're talking to the builders which are building the stuff to onboard the next billion people into crypto. And we have an awesome guest today, someone who I've met IRL a few times. Great guy, doing amazing stuff. We got Stepan from Squads here. Great to see you, and thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were talking before the call started. That mic that you've got is just a great setup, and I'm feeling really envious right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you the recommendations so you can have the same setup.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Literally, like the next few podcasts, you're going to see me with that badass mic, and it's going to be really good. Before maybe we get into a little bit about Squads and what you guys are doing and where you came from, that sort of thing, maybe introduce yourself a little bit. How did you get into crypto? And yeah, what sort of brought you on this journey that here we are in 2022? Is it, well, actually, by the time this goes out, it'll be 2023. But
Right.
What's your crypto journey been thus far? And how did you get into founding a protocol?
So I come from a legal background. I did corporate M&A for about 5 years total. I worked at sort of larger Magic Circle law firms doing structuring M&A transactions and doing sort of restructurings in corporations, doing like general corporate and M&A. And my first interaction with crypto was around 2017 boom, sort of part of the cycle. I was at a larger firm doing research for clients, just, what's a blockchain, how it works, how can they invest, and, is it worth it? Is it, what's the regulatory framework? And,
People pay people to do that?
At the time, yeah, that was a thing. And it was just so unclear. Like, particularly, everybody wanted to know about regulation. And, like, the answer was, we have no clue. Like, kind of like today in many ways. But I don't think it got much better. Yeah, so I did that. So I was at a larger firm, 2017. Got into blockchain initially just for a bit. And then there was, like, a break for me. And around early 2020, got back into it, looking specifically at sort of Ethereum, the governance space, the tooling around governance and DAOs that already was built on ETH. And that was just super interesting to dive in, kind of by myself. I already had my own sort of smaller private legal practice at the time. So I was already like nomading a little, traveling a lot, kind of thinking about doing potentially a startup or like my own thing. And we learned about Solana together with Danny, my friend and now co-founder, early 2021, got into Discord, started talking to people. The hackathon was coming up, and so we managed to kind of rally a bunch of devs together. One of those devs was Sean, who became our co-founder also, and technical lead. He was like the guy on the first call, like we got everybody on Zoom, and like he was the guy talking about sprints and Jira, and we're like, okay, he might know something about software development. Let's see how he does, and he obviously like surpassed any expectations we could have had at the time. And so for like the summer after the hackathon, 2021, it was just kind of nights and weekends. We still had our own lives at the time, but already we're thinking about potentially going full-time, building Squads out on Solana. And late August, we managed to raise our sort of pre-seed round and go full-time from September. So that's a summary of how we got here.
Wow. Yeah. So it's another one of these hackathon stories. I mean, what was your experience during the hackathon? Did you guys enter, or was that just like an inspiration for you guys that you saw, hey, there's a whole bunch of these people that are joining this thing. And I think at the time, there was like hundreds of people joining these hackathons, right? In terms of hundreds of different teams, thousands of different people. But yeah, what was your experience for the hackathon?
Yeah, so there was Solana Season Hackathon that started in May 2021. For us, it was a fantastic experience because like I was coming from a non-technical background. Kind of my main objective there was to find a technical co-founder, find a dev team that would be like really interested to, wouldn't be like specifically hired at that stage, but actually would just be there because they're interested to do it. And like formation chat and Discord was, there were so many developers. Everybody wanted to do stuff. And like the energy of that was incredible. And I was like, oh, that's easy. Like there are so many devs that want to build stuff here, like we should definitely build it here, because like that's kind of, as a non-technical co-founder, that's your main problem, like find people that can actually build stuff and have your visions aligned and all that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, it was an amazing experience. We joined the hackathon, we submitted, didn't win anything. And I remember we were talking to people when they were like evaluating the submissions. We were talking to somebody from, I don't know, it was some investor, and they were like, there aren't really any good projects, like you guys are doing something cool. And then like the submissions actually were evaluated, and we saw how many amazing projects were like pretty much completely built out. Like we just had a front end that was clickable and like a presentation, and people had like whole protocols pretty much live in the hackathon. So we weren't worried. It was pretty clear to us that we wouldn't go too far, at least in terms of winning. But
you know
that was
what, though? I think some of those people, and this is something that we noticed as well, I reckon they'd been building for like 3 months prior, and they're like, oh, a hackathon, let's enter that as well. It's like, seriously, are you building out like a full-on leverage trading options, blah, blah, blah protocol in like a couple of weeks? I don't know. That sounds a little bit risky there.
Yeah, I mean, didn't want to say it out loud, but I think that's the case, right? I think that happens with every hackathon, which is, I guess it's fine, right? Like hackathons do their jobs for projects at different stages of development. Like for us, the main thing it did is just like, gave us some exposure to the ecosystem. Also kind of, they force you to meet some deadline, right? Because like most people who start a hackathon, it's still kind of like a thing on the side for them. But hackathons force you to deliver something to the deadline, and that potentially may be enough for you to keep doing it, right? And so I think like to keep doing it post hackathon is sort of complete. So I think they did the job for us. Like that was kind of the main thing, and I'm glad we joined. And I think like ever since we were, from the squad's perspective as well, like super excited about hackathons, just like supporting teams. And it's still a great funnel for us in terms of onboarding users, because like we sort of do our own evaluation when the hackathon is about to end, and we sort of pick the teams that we think will stick around and have something cool built, and we approach them early and like onboard them to squads, explain them why using a multisig is great and all that kind of stuff. So that's also, we're still very much plugged in to the hackathon experience that Solana is providing, and I think it's really cool. I think it's kind of unique to Solana as well in terms of like the pace of them and engagement as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things that I say often about Solana that maybe is a big differentiator, as you say, is like no one else is doing this. Like there aren't other chains that are setting up hacker houses and all this sort of stuff in like 10 different cities in the next 3-4 months and have thousands of people attending these things and building stuff all the time. Like I think that's one of the big pluses for Solana and what they've been doing. And sure, market will do what it'll do, but I think the important thing is there's lots of people building, and that's what you want. You want hundreds, if not thousands of people turning up to these things and just building new stuff and growing the ecosystem. So yeah, I think it's a critical sort of pathway. And I think we met originally IRL, at least, at one of the hackathons as well in Singapore, which was awesome. But I guess so that was 2021. That was like peak bull market. We're in growth phase. Solana's popping off. And I guess now we are in what we would say maybe a post-FTX world. And what's your take on that? Like, I think maybe we can start from, say, Breakpoint. Breakpoint, big high for the entire ecosystem, thousands of people in the one place in Lisbon in November 2022. And I think it was a very positive experience. I'm interested to hear what you think. But from there to now where we are, where do you think the Solana ecosystem is headed now?
Right, that's a great question. So Breakpoint for us was super important just because like the main product that we have today with Squads, its main user is a team of developers building things on Solana. That's like our main focus right now. And so we decided to go really big at Breakpoint. We had a bunch of presentations, we had a bunch of events, and just, trying to really make sure that the ecosystem is aware of what we're building and, how different teams can make use of it. And so for us, Breakpoint itself was amazing just because like from all the announcements from Solana and from Jump and from many teams that are building cool things, as well as just for us as squads as well, just because like we announced a lot of things. We had like I think 7 or 6 different announcements in terms of like product features, integrations. So we really decided to like go big. And so for us it was a huge high on a kind of team level as well. But by the end of it, I was so tired, and I thought, okay, now that ends and we finally get like at least a week to kind of reflect, because like also you have so many meetings and like there's so much stuff to process, right? Like you need to understand what's valuable, what like prioritize and so on. And the next day pretty much, right, something starts brewing, then it sort of blows up, and you understand, okay, like everything that happened before, you can sort of like put it on the side at least for a bit, and you need to focus on this. And I mean, obviously, it was mentally really complicated. Like we weren't affected, like none of the team members were affected, nor we as a company, but we obviously knew tons of people that have been, and so like mentally that was like a lot to process as well, and just the shock of it and everything. But we were lucky to be really busy during that time, because as soon as that happened, happened, a lot of teams and like just individuals realized that, okay, I want to hold my SPL tokens somewhere. I want to hold them securely. I used to trust FTX with that. Now there is no FTX. And there was like sort of a rush to spin up a bunch of multisigs with us. And a lot of teams also started transitioning. And then the Serum news hit as well. Like when teams started realizing, okay, so where's the upgrade authority to Serum, right? And when that like became apparent to the ecosystem, we had like another wave. Now there was like specifically teams asking about program upgrades and how they can do it via multisig, because a lot of the users of these other projects were like, now that they're aware that there's such thing as upgrade authority and, you know, can have such huge effects on the protocol, which is basically like you can control the whole protocol if you hold it, you know, they kind of anticipating that and also like personally feeling like they should decentralize control over that a bit more, particularly those that had it like in a single hot wallet or in a single cold wallet, whatever it is, right? So I think like we were really busy the next few weeks after. And so for us, there wasn't too much time to dwell on the whole situation. And that also helped us to like, because when you have such rush of users, they start testing things out and like they really need this right now. So you get tons of feedback, tons of feature requests. And so that's kind of like a golden time for us to collect a lot of feedback and, you know, reproduce it in a form of like product updates and features that we're shipping. So from that perspective, that was really helpful. And also generally like having more awareness around self-custody and like people feeling like they need to think a lot more about this is also helpful in terms of our kind of mission to kind of bring that message out there. So yeah, I think that was like the next few weeks after FTX, and then obviously things subsided after that, and we really kind of doubled down on making sure that like Squads is as secure, as agnostic as possible to be that like foundational smart contract wallet layer for the ecosystem. Because, you know, we were always going to do that, but we had like other ideas in mind. There were like some marketing things we wanted to do, some integrations we wanted to do, some like more cool features that were like very retail facing and potentially looking much further down the line. You know, the whole FTX situation really repurposed us to deliver that very core specific, you know, piece of infrastructure that's really basic, but really secure, and that you can kind of self-host your wallet and do it yourself and really make sure that it works. So I think that definitely was a big change for us, just kind of focusing on the fundamentals.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I guess it's maybe for every calamitous event, there's actually maybe some good things which come of it. And would you say that it's maybe pushing more people, like we can talk a little bit about Squads and multisigs in a moment, but I think just in general, like, do you think it's pushing more people maybe away from centralized services and maybe being like, hey, I should be using whatever they are. Maybe it's a DEX, maybe it's their own wallet that's self-custody, maybe it's a hardware wallet, maybe it's like something else that's sort of much more within your control. Do you think this might be like a forcing factor to get people to make the switch? Or if not this, then what?
Yeah, absolutely. And because like multisigs, ledgers, even just like a hot wallet, there's still a lot of friction in terms of setting one up and then keeping one around, right? Making sure that it's secure and like keeping kind of all the protocols in check. And so it's really hard to get people on board onto that when like everything is fine and you can just have your very convenient banking style UX with a centralized exchange, but you completely trust the people kind of behind it. And I think FTX situation definitely changed a lot of minds. And I know how these things go, like it's all cyclical, right? Like people will forget, and there will be again a time when there will be a lot of trust in centralized parties, and we'll probably have to go through that maybe one more time, I don't know. But the point is that at least this whole wave of people that came now, it definitely will help us to make it a much better product so that A, they stick around, but also for future waves we're ready, and potentially the UX of what we're building is getting to a place where kind of the disparity between the experience is minimal and it's not a factor anymore. Where like the only decision that you're trying to make is like, do I want to trust somebody or do I want to trust myself? And our kind of main goal is to bring that experience to pretty much the same level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people get caught up often being like, oh, DeFi is too hard to learn, or self-custody is too hard, or that sort of thing. But A, there's a whole bunch of really cool tools out there that make it easy. And B, this year I think was the year of NFTs, right? And all of these NFT people, they're all using like their own wallets, they're self-custodying, they're using like decentralized auction houses and that sort of thing. So I think there's clearly a massive new user base which has come in, which is totally cool with it. But let's sort of talk about Squads and what you guys do. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Squads is a multisig. Now maybe we can start about like, what is a multisig? Why should I care? Maybe most people, they have a ledger perhaps, or maybe they just have like a wallet on their phone. What's the difference between what you guys are doing at Squads with multisigs, and why should people look into checking out Squads?
Right. So squads, in a broader sense, the protocol itself, we're positioning it as more agnostic now. And so it actually has like a broader appeal just because
Does a lot of
it can
stuff.
actually do a lot more things, right? But I think the core application of the protocol today is providing a multisig for Solana ecosystem. And so multisig itself is it's a pretty familiar concept to people, but they just kind of don't know it. So because it's just an idea that it's a wallet that has multiple keys that you need to have to unlock it, right? I think that's the most basic explanation. I think in corporate world, you can see that where like you need, multiple signatures from different officers in the company to approve a certain banking transaction, right? Like that can be example that's familiar, or like vault that needs multiple keys to be opened as opposed to a single one, right? So I think that part's supposedly pretty familiar. In blockchains, multisigs also existed for a very long time. There was like the original Bitcoin multisig, and then Ethereum has Gnosis Safe now that's very widely used, and it's like a key piece of infrastructure for the Ethereum ecosystem. And squads, when we started, we had a lot of product ideas, but as we were going along, we really focused on delivering the actual infrastructure layer first because it didn't exist on Solana. And so comparing multisig as a way to self-custody your assets to sort of other ways to do it, like you can have, a hot wallet with Phantom or Glow or Soulflare or Backpack. With those, you only have one set of keys that controls the wallet. And you can obviously store that sort of private key or seed phrase in a secure location, but it's still, you rely on a single point of failure, right? If that private key is compromised or that seed phrase is compromised, your assets are at risk. With a cold wallet, that's more secure because your private key is stored on that separate device, but it's again a single point of failure. So multisigs allow you to have like a setup, for instance, for individuals that we advise to have as 2 ledgers and a single hot wallet with a threshold of 2 out of 3, right? And so that means to do any transaction, you need to have at least 1 ledger with you and your hot wallet. So that's pretty convenient. You just need to plug in your ledger, and the hot wallet is in your browser or on your phone, and the other ledger is somewhere, stored securely and only needed in case of recovery, in case one of the other 2 keys is compromised. So that's like the setup we advise for individuals. And that's like in a very basic sense. I think as we were building out squads, what we learned is that multisigs really go, everybody used to call them multisig wallets. And what we realized along the way is that they're actually consensus mechanism as opposed to a wallet, right? And the reason for that is because they not only can control treasury assets like NFTs and fungible tokens, but you can manage through a multisig a program. You can manage a validator. You can manage a lot more things. We call them like on-chain assets that you can have. And so we're still discovering what else you can manage via that consensus mechanism. And as more things get on chain, you can manage more things through that as well. And so we're pretty bullish on the multisig use case, even in its own right, but we're also exploring kind of different applications of the infrastructure that we built towards kind of other self-custody solutions that kind of go well with multisig, but are different structurally.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said before about it being infrastructure is super critical, because what we saw with Ethereum, with Gnosis Safe, that sort of grew out to be this ubiquitous thing which everyone uses. Like if you're a DAO, of course, on Ethereum, like you're using Gnosis Safe. And if you're not, it's kind of a bit suspicious. And I think maybe that's definitely the position that Squads now has on Solana, is an infrastructure. So as you say, it's not just a wallet, it's, hey, an upgrade authority or something like that. And certainly with DAOs and having transparency and building trust within the ecosystem and that sort of thing, having a multisig seems like one of the critical components to actually do that, right? So I guess, are you seeing like, who are the type of customers that might be interested in what the infrastructure which you guys are building? I guess it's anywhere from like personal users. I know the team at Step, we've been using Squads since pretty much you guys started, I think, in a personal capacity. But yeah, like who else is out there? Like who sort of uses this kind of infrastructure?
I think today the main user that we have is a team that's building things on Solana. So we wouldn't really call them a DAO yet. Like every project is somewhere on this timeline where you start as a fully centralized team and you end as a, well, hopefully fully decentralized DAO, right? And I think up until the moment you decide to decentralize control over different on-chain assets that you have as a team, you definitely rely on a multisig. And then after that, you can start looking at governance setup where the token holders actually control some of those assets. Like you can use Realms and SPL governance. I think Nation is building something in that direction as well. So that's kind of how we position ourselves. Because on Ethereum, multisigs are used by DAOs a lot, but that means that like you have 10 people that are core group that controls the treasury, and then there's like a snapshot vote, and then they just kind of abide by what has been decided in that poll, essentially. I think on Solana, there's a push towards more decentralization for DAOs, that kind of creates a little bit of this sort of binary situation where you're either very centralized or you're very decentralized, right? And I think we are kind of there definitely to support everything up until the moment you decide to decentralize or control over certain parts of assets. Yeah, so majority of our users today are just teams like us, right? That have a program on Solana, that have a treasury that they just raised or got a grant, and they run their own validator. They eventually decide to mint a token and start vesting into their investors and themselves, the team. And so all of that can be managed and achieved through our product, leveraging the protocol that we built underneath. But that doesn't mean that it's limited to that, right? Like we have a bunch of use cases where like just some individual that's very cautious about security, because like the main thing we should make, I think, more apparent after FTX as well, is like there were so many kind of comments from people that like they had all of their savings on FTX. And I think even if it's a very trusted and reliable system, which FTX wasn't, just infrastructure diversification when you're talking about storing assets in this very kind of new things is also very helpful. So like having multiple infrastructures to hold your assets, even if, you know, you trust one of them completely, is also very helpful, right? So like we have a lot of teams that have a multisig on Ethereum, they have a multisig on Solana, and then they have something in the bank, right? Some of it is done for convenience, some of it is done for actually diversifying, right? And making sure you kind of hedge that. And then for individuals, the same. Like they hold something on a ledger, they hold something in a squad, they hold something in a hot wallet, right? And then on the DAO kind of side of things, if you're like a DAO set up on Realms, we have a module that's called Mesh that allows you to actually vote on chain to deploy a bunch of multisigs as your sub DAOs that are sort of controlled by the DAO at the top. We don't really have, like, we built that out, and so it's available, but I don't think any DAO has, there's a DAO has yet to actually leverage that for their organizational setup, just because, like, Solana DAOs are still pretty early, and, like, they don't have these, like, very complicated organizational structures where they have, like, you know, 7 or 10 sub DAOs, like, doing sort of different things. And so I think as we kind of progress into that, like, Mesh will be potentially used more, and we're kind of looking forward for somebody to pioneer that specific use case for DAOs as well.
Yeah, I think the recent Serum situation, which I guess the brief TLDR overview as I understand it is Serum was a program on Solana, very important program. It was the order book DEX. It was initially made by some people from Alameda at some stage, and essentially the upgrade authority for that program, which is out there and doing its thing, it was just unknown who controls that in the wake of this FTX and Alameda sort of collapse. And with money flowing in and out of Alameda wallets and everyone think it's hacked in some way, there was quite a lot of, you know, people saying, well, does that mean the money that's in Serum is also at risk? So then there was this community effort to fork Serum, and a bunch of different projects have gone different ways on it. I think there's another fork called OpenBook, which people have adopted a little bit. People like Aldrin are doing their own as well. But it seems like, you know, this problem of the upgrade authority, it's kind of pretty entrenched with the entire ecosystem, right? Like pretty much every program deployed on a blockchain somewhere needs to be done by some sort of address, some sort of wallet, some sort of source. So either that source is one entity, in which case, okay, well, that's the entity that you need to corrupt in some way, or it's done by something which is maybe representative by, you know, a lot of people that need a lot of signatures to be able to actually go and do something. So yeah, is that sort of, I guess, an emerging use case that you guys have seen? I don't know if you've been involved in Serum, the post-Serum stuff, but maybe upgrade authorities for contracts. That's probably an essential part for building any sort of Solana contract, I would say these days, is to look into some sort of multisig to be owning it.
That's correct. So everything that happened with Serum definitely reinvigorated that discussion in the ecosystem. And like people started questioning, okay, I'm using this protocol. Who actually like has the upgrade authority to it? Like it became a thing people started to think about. So that's been super helpful for us because we provide not just a multi-sig setup that's secure and reliable to hold that upgrade authority, but also like the whole product flow that we worked out over the course of like a few months, which makes it very convenient for you to, you know, manage different programs. Because a lot of projects have more than one program, right? Like they have 7 or 8 or 6, whatever it is. And so we also deliver a full-on product experience in terms of how you can manage them. And then like every program can have like multiple upgrades. And so you can see the upgrade history, and like the whole flow has been sort of perfected to make sure that there's no omissions, there are no mistakes, and just making that easier for developers. So that's today like a killer use case for squads. Like majority of our users on the team level, that's what they use squads for, because like with treasuries, they still have options, right? With the program, there is no option. Like you need to hold it on Solana, you need to hold it somewhere. And I think still today, there's a lot of programs that are still using, you know, a single key to manage an upgrade authority. And I do need to caveat that whole discussion by the fact that ideally, we shouldn't really have any users of that kind because all programs should be immutable. You should burn the upgrade authority. Nobody should have it, right? But I think that's something that can happen down the line. As a good intermediary step is to decentralize control of the program, because if I have the upgrade authority, I can control the whole program, right? Like if your program has 10 million TVL and I have the upgrade authority, in one upgrade, I can take control of the program and get the funds out, and that's it, right? So it's a huge attack vector. So for squads, that's one of the main use cases. We have a lot of sort of larger projects that are leveraging our infrastructure to manage either the whole program upgrade authority or program upgrade authority together with different like aspects of the protocol, like different admin keys or whatever it is. So that's definitely an emerging use case that we have spent the last few months specifically like onboarding a lot of teams on the basis of, and it's been, we got a lot of support from Solana and from other teams that, had a really good experience with us, kind of trying to make it apparent to the ecosystem that like this is a really convenient way to do it. So that's been a huge effort for us lately.
Absolutely. And I think adding value by being able to, as you say, it's a consensus mechanism. And maybe we can talk a bit about Fuse as well. So this is sort of, would you call it a plugin? Would you call it a separate feature? Is it a new protocol, a product? Like, what's Fuse all about? And how is that adding value to the Squads ecosystem?
So I think to start a bit from afar is the idea behind your traditional wallet is just basically a key pair, and it's very convenient to connect it to, the whole kind of infrastructure within the ecosystem and how you can connect your wallet to a dApp is very well built out, because that's like wallets are the main rails for users to interact with these protocols. When it comes to a multisig is a smart contract wallet. So underneath there's actually a program, and it's architecturally more complex than just having a single wallet. And so it's not inherent that you can connect a multisig as you connect a regular wallet to any dApp protocol, right? And so if you're using a multisig, you're kind of accepting that limitation that whatever we integrated on the product side, you can interact with, right? So if you want to, get yield, if you want to interact with the lending protocol, interact with the DEX, we have to integrate them in our interface for you to be able to do it specifically directly from the multisig, right? And Fuse, like the idea for it was to solve that problem, to remove that limitation, to give our users the experience they have with their individual wallet, where it's an extension or it's a mobile app and they go and connect and trigger a transaction, to give that experience to our users, but actually have them connect their squad when they do it. And so that's the whole idea behind Fuse, is that it's an extension that you install, like you install, Phantom or Glow, and then you connect with it to any dApp protocol on Solana. And when you initiate a transaction, you can initiate it not for the actual wallet to sign, but for your multisig, right? And that actually initiates a transaction there. And then other members need to approve. And so in its kind of very early like V1 of Fuse is just that. And eventually we're kind of looking in different directions where we can take that, because like it's basically built on this concept of account abstraction, that like you separate, kind of Fuse's one wallet, multisig is like your assets are in the multisig, and Fuse is a separate wallet, and so your assets are kind of abstracted from the wallet that you actually connect to dApps with. So if you connect with Fuse to, a dApp that's malicious, or if it's like some kind of phishing thing, your assets are not in any way compromised, because the other signers still need to do it in the multisig and approve the transaction. So I think like we're looking where to take Fuse next, but the core idea initially is to launch it in this current form. We're right now like beta testing it privately and onboarding in waves a bunch of beta testers from different teams that use squads already, to see how we can kind of perfect the experience there. And once that's complete, we'll see where to take it next. But we're really excited that just like it's a huge add-on for current users, making that experience very seamless and familiar that they have with individual wallets.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say that this is another wallet that people should be looking at? Because people have a lot of opportunities in front of them, right? I can use Ledger, I can use Phantom, Solflare. That's actually one of the differentiators of Solana, is there's just tons of really awesome wallets. And I think that's where multisigs have not been able to keep up in the past, was where, hey, there's all of these different cool things which I want to do, and but they're not built into my multisig, or it's really hard, or I like can't connect it to that yield farming app over there. So therefore I don't use it, and therefore people get rugged or lose all their money or whatever, right? So you said it's a separate extension, right? And are you positioning it as like this is a new wallet which people need to download, and you'll see it there in the list, and you can, go and use the Fuse wallet, or is this something which connects to other wallets, or how does that work? I guess like, could I load a Ledger hardware wallet as one of the signing authorities to Fuse?
To answer your first part of the question, it is a separate wallet. Like, you need to download it, you need to install it, like you do with Phantom or Backpack or whatever it is. And the second part of things, yeah, I mean, you can use Ledger with it, but it kind of defeats the purpose, right? Because the whole idea behind Fuse is that you have a multi-sig setup, right? You already have a squad, you have 3 or 4 members, there's a threshold, and you add Fuse as one of the signers for that specific purpose, like to actually be able to initiate transactions for that squad with any dApps protocol on Solana, right? So for instance, with Fuse, you can go to Friction or you can go to Solend and initiate a transaction there, and it will pop up in your squad as a transaction for the squad to approve, right? So that's why we position Fuse. It is a separate wallet in nature, but the positioning in the ecosystem that we're pushing right now is that it's a companion tool for your squad, right? So it really is there to enhance the UX for you, because right now, like, you can only interact with things that we have integrated. So once Fuse goes live, you can download it, add it to your squad as a member, and then as you do with other wallets that you have installed in your browser, you can go to different dApps and protocols, trigger transactions, and the squad will be able to approve them, right? So I think that's like the current iteration of it, and we can see where it goes from there, because there are like more opportunities to package more experiences just within that extension, right? Like, for instance, eventually you might not need to go to our desktop UI and sign anything from there. Like, everybody can have a Fuse wallet and sign directly from it, right? And so that will mean that, again, it's all about UX, right? And simplifying it and making sure that you have less friction, less steps in terms of getting to where you want to get to. So Fuse is also like a good foundation for us to play around with these things and see where we can make a multi-sig experience easier as opposed to where it is today.
Absolutely. And I guess on this point of UX and usability and stuff like that, Solana's recently it's been going down the path of mobile quite a lot. And mobile, like, we've got the phone coming, the Saga phone. We've got the XNFT backpack, which is integrating a lot of different stuff for the phone and the App Store and blah, blah, blah. And at least for Step, I think it's about 23 to 27% of our user base is on mobile as well. So mobile is certainly a thing that's out there. And I would say one of the limitations for a lot of mobile wallets has been, well, I can't really do too much with it. And they're kind of been relegated to, you know, I can just maybe put $50 on there. And if I'm at a party and I see someone and I can approve an NFT, you know, I can send that. But A, what's your take on mobile? And is there an approach that you at Squads are looking to get involved in mobile somehow? And B, can I use Squads on my phone and sign transactions from my phone and be able to get the best of both worlds, something like that? But yeah, curious what your take is.
Right. So I think for A, we're super excited about mobile. I think Saga is a great move, and we are about to finish the native mobile app for Saga for Squads. So I think that's, yeah, I mean, you'll be able to play around with our native app pretty soon on Android generally, but on Saga specifically. And we're also looking to see how we can leverage the secure element that's built into Saga for, again, simplifying UX in some shapes and forms. I think in terms of how you can use Squads on mobile today, yeah, I mean, we have a mobile version that's just responsive mobile, so you can obviously use it through Phantom, you can use it through, like, Glow has an extension for your phone for Safari, right? So if you have an iPhone, you can do that. And then, yeah, Solflare has a browser built in as well. And so a lot of our users, you know, they have dialect notifications installed. So some initiates a transaction, they see it, you know, on Telegram or email or text, they get notified, oh, here's a transaction I need to sign, and they can go to Phantom and sign a transaction from mobile. I think that depends on a type of multisig we're talking about. So if it's like an upgrade, a multisig that holds an upgrade authority to a large protocol, probably all guys on that multisig have a ledger, and for the upgrade, you actually potentially would want to see, you know, what's the buffer that's being loaded, like what's the upgrade. So those guys still use desktop, and I think they should, right? And like a lot of the experience that we bring into like program upgrades and transaction building will be desktop only, because like these are very advanced features. But if it's just kind of a basic setup where you hold a bunch of assets and you want to send them out to buy an NFT for Magic Eden, that's fine to, I think, have a bunch of hot wallets in there that should be secure enough. And yeah, I mean, you can do all that from mobile today.
I love it. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting use cases to come out of it. And I do agree with Anatoly's sort of whole idea that the world is mobile already. There's billions of devices out there. Everyone's connected to the internet, but it's not really used that much in crypto. So it's really cool to see you guys are building an app, and no doubt that'll be out soon. I guess 2023. This will be live in 2023. It's a whole new year. Hopefully a lot more better, shall we say. It's a better year in 2023 without any blow-ups, hopefully. But what's going on for you guys in the new year? And what's some of the priorities that you guys have at Squads for 2023? And I guess Fuse coming out and going production ready and that sort of thing is one. But yeah, what else is on the horizon?
So I think there are like 4 big things, right? So one, as I mentioned, native app for Android and for Saga. Like we've been preparing a lot for that, and I'm excited for everybody to see because it also eventually will bloom into its own unique experience, hopefully. So I think that's exciting. The other thing is V3 itself is currently being formally verified, and I'm looking forward to that being done and finalized. And as soon as it is, we will make it immutable. So that's like a big event for us internally, but for the ecosystem at large as well, because we're sort of reaching that final level of verification that the code base is as secure as it can be, and formally verifying it and making it immutable, kind of trying to also inspire other projects in the ecosystem to at least have that mindset. Because like our kind of approach is like we get a version to a place, we formally verify it, freeze it, then we move on to the next one, and then we do the same with the next one. Maybe eventually we'll run out of it, and like for some version we'll realize, okay, like there's nothing else we can add. That's it, right? Hopefully someday that will happen, but right now there's still a long way to go. So I think like the second part is V3 getting formally verified and immutable. The third thing is V4. So we're scoping it right now. It will be just a more beefier program. We'll have more features. Will take more time, I think, to get it to production just because it's a more complex program. Because like Squads V3 today is like around 1,000 lines of code. And it's been audited multiple times and it's been like around for 6 months now. And it's also a very small program, right? And so it's very comfortable for us. I think the V4, because it needs to accommodate a lot more things like dynamic thresholds and time locks and just kind of more complexity, specifically targeting like power users that want to have that kind of experience. So yeah, I mean, we're scoping it right now. It will be a more complicated program, but we're excited to get it out as well. And then, yeah, the last thing is Fuse going live. I think sometime in Q1 23, kind of depending on beta testing and how that goes. But yeah, I think that those are like the main 4 things, and then there are a bunch of surprises here and there that we'll have to reveal in due course.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's certainly a high bar to set, making a program immutable and going from there. I know certainly in our experience, I think Radium, we're on to version 6 of the Radium program in some way, right? And we have to integrate each different one. So I think for dev teams, like it does make sense that once you get to a certain point at a certain scale, having that immutability certainly does help, and having things like a multisig upgrade authority and blah 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 is the way to go. But so it sounds like there's a lot of building to be done in 2023. That's great to hear. Where can people keep up to date with everything that you guys are doing? I assume Discords, blogs, websites. Where should we go to find out the latest?
I think Twitter is the best, right? So at Squads Protocol, we just actually set up a Twitter for Fuse. So it's at Fuse Wallet and at Squads Labs. All 3, like eventually sort of labs will have more general content and we'll put out articles and kind of content around self-custody and best practices. Squads Protocol is kind of really specifically around content for builders that want to build on top of Squads and product updates for the actual, Squads product. And then Fuse will be kind of there to support all the releases we have around it. So yeah, all those 3 is a good place to learn about us and see what's coming.
Absolutely. And we'll put links wherever the links are in the video, but there'll be links to Squads for everyone to check out. Look, Stepan, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thanks for telling us all about Squads. And just as one of the OGs in the ecosystem, you guys have been doing great stuff. Really love it. Always have since day one. And everyone, if you haven't already, go and check out what they're doing. The wallet that they've built is amazing. And then it's actually much more than a wallet now. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And certainly I think this should be something that is built into the learning process for a lot of dev teams as well that are starting out building stuff, is, having a decentralized authority to upgrade programs. It's just a safer way to do stuff, and it makes sense. And hey, like once you get to a scale, you're going to have to do it anyway. So I think it should be part of the curriculum in some way. But look, thank you so much for your time today. We'll put links, but don't forget to subscribe to the Next Billion podcast. We're interviewing the builders that are building the protocols, wallets, multisigs, whatever it might be for the next billion people. So thanks for joining us today, and thank you for coming along, Stepan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, George. It was great.
Thank you very much.